Welcome to the treasures of Mishnayot. We are in Mishnayot of Berachot. We are in Perek Zayin, Mishnah Gimel, that's chapter 7, Mishnah 3. This is a new Mishnah. Today's topic, the text of the zimmun. Everything that you see in red over here, for example, Ketzad Mizamnin, Beshalosha, Omer, Nevarech. Anything that we see in the red, the highlighted letters, all this Rabotai is the Mishnah. Let me just show you over here. Ketzad Mizamnin, Beshalosha, Omer, Nevarech. The black is the Kahati explaining to us the Mishnah. So before we're going to see the Mishnah inside, we're going to see the Kahati. The Kahati begins. Ketzad Mizamnin. How does one do zimmun? Now, before we continue, let's get two words down. What is the definition of zimmun? I'll be saying it in Hebrew. Just remember this definition. The definition of zimmun is when three or more people eat together and invite each other to bless Hashem after the meal. That's one word you have to be familiar with. Another word is the mizamen. What is the mizamen, or who is the mizamen? The person leading the zimmun is called the mizamen. Okay? So the Mishnah begins. Ketzad mizamnin. How does one do zimun? Literally meaning, how does one invite other people to go ahead and bless Hashem after the meal? Okay, but Rabotai, pay attention. When I say one word zimun and how much I have to add to it in English to be able to define it. That's why I prefer using the word zimun and mizamen. Just makes it simpler and you're able to better understand the Mishnah. Fine. Ketzad mizamnin. How does one do zimun? Comes the Kahat and he says, Ma'u hanusach shel birkat zimun. What is the text of the blessing of the zimun? So the Mishnah answers, Bishalosha, whenever you have three people that are sitting and eating together bread. So he says, Bishalosha she'achlu ke'echad, when you have three people that ate together, like one, Omer hamizamen, the mizamen, the one that is leading the zimun, he's going to say, Nevarech she'alchanu mishalo. So let's see this one time in English, Rabotai, and then you guys are going to get the hang of it. What does it mean, Nevarech? Nevarech literally means let us bless. She'alchanu mishalo, the one from whose food we have eaten. Okay? So if you have three people that are sitting together and eating bread, the mizamen says, Nevarech she'alchanu mishalo. Let us bless from the one from whose food we have eaten. The next step in the Mishnah, Bishaloshav vehu. What happens if you have three people plus the mizamen? Im yeshalosha milvad mizamen. What happens if you have three people besides the mizamen? Omer lahem mizamen. Let the mizamen say to them, Barachu she'alchanu mishalo. Now the text changed. It went from Nevarech to Baruchu. Sharei chutz mimenu, because since besides him, besides the mizamen, yesh shalosha shechayavim b'zimun, you already have three people that are obligated in the zimun. Once you have three people that are obligated in the zimun, he no longer has to say the word nevarech, but rather he can say baruchum. Now, Rabotai, there's a very big difference between nevarech and baruchum. When you use the language nevarech, you're saying let us bless. You are including yourself with the people that are sitting and eating with you. But when you say Baruchu, you're telling them, you guys bless. So that's why comes the Kat, and he says like this, B'gemor mivarim, in the Gemara is explained, Sheyachol gam lomar Baruchu. A person is able to say also Baruchu shalchanu mishalo. You're able to say that. Aval, however, mikol makom, nevertheless, Nevarech adif. It is better to say the word Nevarech. If you have an option of saying Nevarech versus Baruchu, you want to say Nevarech. Now the only thing is like this. So why do we have to know the Mishnah of Baruchu if it's really Nevarech? It's always what happens if you use Baruch Hu versus Nevarech. A person went and he said, Baruch Hu shalchanu mishalom. Did he fulfill the obligation of the zimmun? Yeah, he did. Because Baruch Hu you could also say. Now, why is it so important to say Nevarech? Because you don't take out yourself from the group. You are included with them. But by you saying Baruch Hu, you're excluding yourself from the group. So right now we saw 3. You say Nevarech shalchanu mishalo. 3 plus 1. You say Baruch Hu shalchanu mishalo. Now we're going to see what happens when you have 10 people. If you have 10 people that they ate together, Omer HaMizamen, the Mizamen says, Nevarech leloheinu shalchanu mishalo. Rabotai, we're adding over here the word leloheinu, right over here. Once you have 10 people, now you have 10 people. So now Kadosh Baruch Hu can rest amongst 10 people. Because for a minyan you need 10 people, so therefore you could mention Hashem's name. So comes the Kahati and he says, V'yesh gursim, and there's some text in the Siddur that it's not Nevarech lelokeinu, but rather the text is Nevarech Elokeinu. And that is the text that we use. We use the text of Nevarech Elokeinu. This is our text right over here, Botai. We're going to stay with this text. Nevarech Elokeinu. V'hi girsa mikubela, this is the more preferred text that one should use. This is the opinion of the Tosfot and Rabbeinu Yonah. Now, Rabotai, we have to understand something very fascinating. Maybe I should, okay, let me explain to you outside and then let me show it to you in the Mishnah. You're not going to be able to understand that. There is a machloket between Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Yossi Galili. That once you have more than 10 people, is it enough to use one of Hashem's name? Or do I constantly have to add more of Hashem's name when you have more people with me? For example, if it's 10, we know you have to add the word Elokeinu, which is one of Hashem's name. When you have 100, we're going to see Rabbi Yossi Galili says, you're going to add the word La Hashem right over here, La Hashem. So for 10 people, you have Elokeinu already. You have this word of Elokeinu. For 100 people, you're adding La Hashem. When you're going to 1,000, you're adding Elokei Israel. So now it's not only La Hashem Elokeinu, but you are also adding Elokei Israel. When you have 10 people, 10,000 people, you're not adding La Hashem Elokeinu Elokei Israel. Now you're adding also Elokei Hatzivaot Yoshev HaKiruvim. So you are always adding more names. However, Rabotai, there's a problem. Rabbi Akiva was not happy with this. Why? This is what I want to show. This is what the Kahati is going to explain. But let me tell you outside first. The Kahati is going to say, in the Rabbi Akiva's understanding, he says, I don't understand. How can you add this word La Hashem? La Hashem does not belong with you. Once you have more than 10 people, La Hashem should not belong. Let me show you. Here. Right, what do we just say? Let's do this. According to Rabbi Akiva, if you had the 10 people, right, that ate together, he's going to say, Omer HaMizamen Nevarech Lelokeinu or Nevarech Elokeinu, whichever one, doesn't matter. But it's Nevarech Elokeinu, and it's not Nevarech La Hashem. It's not that, correct? Let me make this red. And it's not La Hashem, correct? That's not it. That's not what we're saying. We're saying Nevarech Elokeinu, but Rabbi Yossi Galili is adding the word La Hashem. So comes the Kahati and he explains like this. He gives you the reasoning of Rabbi Akiva why he doesn't add the word La Hashem. So he said like this. Why? Lefi sherak bishir, since only by a song, when we're singing to Hashem, ubehoda'ah, when we're thanking Hashem, katuv, it's written, shiru la Hashem, hodu la Hashem, sing to Hashem, thank Hashem. I could use this language of La Hashem when it's a song, when it's a thank you. But in our situation, it's not a song and it's not a thank you. Aval beberacha, but when you're dealing with a bracha, which is what we're going to do, we're going to bless Birkat Hamazon. Katuv, it's written, b'mikehalot, in the assemblies, berechu Elokim, bless Hashem. So it doesn't say berechu la Hashem. It says berechu Elokim. So therefore comes Rabbi Akiva and he says, the text when you have 10 people is be'asara, you're going to say nevarech lelokeinu. And not like Rabbi Yosef Galili that says nevarech la Hashem Elokeinu. Okay? That's why I wanted to show you back and forth, because to show you that difference so you'll be able to understand. Now, right, and he continues and he gives another verse. And he says, also says, in Berachu Amim Elokeinu, bless my nation, our God. So we see clearly it's not using La Hashem, but rather it's using Elokeinu. So there comes Rabbi Akiva and he says, when you have 10 people, you're going to say Nevarech Lelokeinu Shalchanu Mishalo, or Nevarech Elokeinu Shalchanu Mishalo, which is the preferred way of saying it. Now, B'mikahalot Beruchu Elokim is found in Tehillim, in Perek Samechet Pasuk Chavzayin, that's 68 verse 27. Baruch Hu Amim Elokeinu is found also in Tehillim in Perek Samechvav, that's 66 Pasuk Chet, which is verse 8. Fine. Continues the Kahati and he says, Ba'asara vihu. What happens now if I have 10 people plus him, plus the mizamin? Im yesh asara milvad hamizamin. If you have 10 people besides the mizamin, Omer the mizamin, Omer lahem hamizamin, the mizamin is going to tell them, Baruchu Elokeinu shalchanu mishalo. Rabotai, we change only one word. Before we said if you have 10 people, the text is Nevarech lelokeinu. Over here, when you have 10 plus 1, meaning 10 plus the mizamin, it's going to be Baruchu Elokeinu Shalchanu Mishalo. So what you're really changing is the word Nevarech from Nevarech to Baruchu. Continues Rabbi Akiva, which is the Tanakam, and he says, Echad Asara, whether you have 10 people, Echad Eser Ribo, whether you have 10,000 people. We'll see the Kahati is going to tell us right over here that Ribo, the definition of Ribo is Hainu Aseret Alafim, which is 10,000. Nevertheless, he tells us over here, when it says Eser Ribo, it literally means a very big number, like even 100,000 people. So it says like this, Echad Asara, Echad Eser Ribo, whether you have Ben Asara, whether you have 10 people, Uben Meya Elef, whether you have 100,000 people, Sha'achlu, that they ate together as one, Din Echad Lahem, they all have one halacha. Meaning to say that if I'm blessing 10 people, the text is going to be Nevarech Lelokeinu Shalchanu Mishalo. If I'm blessing 100,000 people, meaning if I'm doing the zimmun with 100,000 people, the text is going to be Nevarech Elokeinu Shalchanu Mishalo, or Baruchu Elokeinu Shalchanu Mishalo. Again, Abotai, we're going to see right now that the text, I think we did see it 1 second. Yeah, right over here. We're going to see right now, actually, right over here. He's going to say right over here, Baruchu and Nevarech. It doesn't matter, Abotai, which text you're going to say, but what you want to see is, like we saw above, that the more preferred text is Nevarech Elokeinu Shalchanu Mishalo. Okay, let's do this. Let me see something. Right over here. Right, we said over here. Right, we said Nevarech Elokeinu V'hi Agirsa Mikubala. This is the more accepted text. So again, you can say, right, Nevarech Lelokeinu Shalchanu Mishalo when you have 10 people or when you have 100,000 people, or you can say Baruchu Elokeinu Shalchanu Mishalo. It doesn't matter. But the preferred text you're going to go with Nevarech Elokeinu. Okay. So let's see this one more time. Echad Asara ve'echad Eser Ribo. Ben Asara or Ben Meya Elef. Whether you have 10 people, whether you have 100,000 people. Shachlu kechad, that they ate together. Din echad lahem, they all have one halacha. That means, Rabotai, it's always Elokeinu and it's never changing to not La Hashem, like we saw over here. It's not going to change to La Hashem, it's not going to change to Elokei Israel, and then it's not going to change to Elokei HaTzevot. Hashem's name are not changing. It's only one name of Hashem, which is Elokeinu, and that's it. The Gemara Mavur, and the Gemara is explained, Shezod dat Rabbi Akiva, so this is the opinion of Rabbi Akiva that holds, like we'll see later on in the Mishnah, whether you have a lot of people, whether you have a few people, meaning from 10 and above, the mizamen has to always say the same text, which is either, this is what I was trying to explain to you, either Baruch Hu or Nevarech. Elokeinu Shalchanu Mishlo. Doesn't matter what he says, but the preferable custom is to say Nevarech Elokeinu Shalchanu Mishlo. And according to Rabbi Akiva, which is the Tanakama, Tanakama literally means the first teacher, which according to the Tanakama, which is the Tanakama. So one more time, Rabbi Akiva is the Tanakama, which teaches us that whether you have 10 people or whether you have 100,000 people, the text is always the same. You're going to say Nevarech Shalchanu Mishlo. Now, Aval Mikan ve'elach that Rabbi Yossi Galili. But from here and on, it's all the opinion of Rabbi Yossi Galili. Now, what does that mean? If we look over here, Rabotai, we'll do the Mishnah with you, Bezrat Hashem B'Lineder. Let's just finish the Kahati first. When we begin the Mishnah over here, Ketzet Mezamnim, etc., what we just did, once we get to Echad Asara ve'Echad Asara Ribor, what we just saw, whether it's 10 people, whether it's 100,000 people, or whether it's 10,000 people, according to Rabbi Akiva, it's all one in the same text. It's always going to be Nevarech Elokeinu Shalchanu Mishlo. Now, B'me'ah Omer, but you see over here, Rabotai, clearly see over here, there's no name. It only says B'me'ah Omer. When you have 100 people, you're going to say. Don't think that this is the opinion of Rabbi Akiva. Comes the Kahati and he tells you from here and on, meaning from the word B'me'ah Omer, from here and on, it's all the opinion of Rabbi Yossi HaGalili. That's what he says over here. Aval Mikan ve'elach that Rabbi Yossi HaGalili. From here and on, it is the opinion of Rabbi Yossi HaGalili. Hasuver that he holds, lahalam b'mishatim, later on in our Mishnah, she'im ribuya kahal yesh lo hosiv askarot Hashem benusach hazimun. With the increasing of the assembly, you should add many more mentioning of Hashem's name in the text of the zimmun. I'll do it with you one more time. What does he mean? Watch this. B'me'ah, when you have 100 people, the mizamen has to say Nevarech La Hashem Elokeinu. Elokeinu comes because of 10 people. La Hashem comes because of 100 people. Let me show you something else. Be'elev, when you have 1,000 people, you're going to say Nevarech La Hashem Elokeinu Elokei Israel. Elokeinu comes because of 10. Right? This is because of 10. La Hashem comes because of 100. Elokei Israel, you added another name of Hashem because of 1,000 people. Let's go one more down. Biribo, when you have 10,000 people, you're going to say La Hashem, which is for 100. Elokeinu, which is for 10. Elokei Israel, which is for 1,000. Elokei HaTzevaot, which is for 10,000. So you see over here, you have more additional of Hashem's name. So that's what the Rabbi Yossi Galili holds. With the increasing of the people in the bread meal, you have to go ahead and you have to start adding more names of Hashem. And which means to say, if you have 100 people that are sitting and eating together, that they ate together, the mizamen should say, Nevarech la Hashem Elokeinu ala mazon she'alchanu. Blessed to Hashem our God on the food which we have eaten. Kimifarish to come, like we'll see later on. So we see over here, Rabotai, clearly that what did Rabbi Yossi Galili do? He added the word La Hashem. Right, let's do this. The word La Hashem is added for 100 people. The word Elokein is added because of 10 people. B'me'avihu, what happens if you have now 100 people and him? Im yesh me'achutz mimen, what happens if you have 100 people besides the mizamen? Omer Baruch Hu b'makom nevarech. That's it. All the mizamen is going to do, he's going to say the word Baruch Hu in place of nevarech. Instead of saying Nevarech la Hashem Elokeinu, I'm right over here. Instead of saying Nevarech la Hashem Elokeinu ala mazon shalchanu, he's going to say Baruch Hu la Hashem Elokeinu ala mazon shalchanu. Very simple. Now, Be'elav, what happens if you have 1,000 people that are sitting together? Be'elav Omer HaMizamen, when you have 1,000 people, the Mizamen should say, Nevarech la Hashem. La Hashem comes for 100 people. That was added because of 100 people. Elokeinu was added for 10 people. Elokei Israel, we just added this new addition. This comes for 1,000 people. So what is he going to bless them, Mizamen? Nevarech la Hashem Elokeinu Elokei Israel ala mazon she'alchanu. That's what he's going to bless. Be'elav v'hu omer, and when you have 1,000 plus him, plus the Mizamen is going to say, Baruch Hu b'makom nevarech. He's going to say, bless, instead of saying, let us bless. Right? He's going to say, Baruch Hu, instead of saying, nevarech. So again, very simple. When it's 1,000 people, he says, nevarech la Hashem, etc. When it's 1,000 plus the Mizamen, he's going to say, Baruch Hu la Hashem Elokeinu Elokei Israel ala mazon shalchanu. Same text. Now, Rabotai, biribo. What happens if you have be'aseret alafim? When you have 10,000 misubin. Misubin literally means the people that are reclining and having the bread meal with you. Omer HaMizamen, the Mizamen has to say, Nevarech la Hashem. Let's go slowly, Rabotai. Nevarech la Hashem. The la Hashem comes because of 100 people. Elokeinu came because of 10 people. Elokei Israel came because of 1,000 people. Elokei Atzevaot, the God of all hosts, meaning the God of the armies in the upper world, comes because of 10,000 people. Yoshev HaKiruvim ala mazon shalchanu. He sits on the Kiruvim, on the food which we have eaten. Now, Rabotai, what are the Kiruvim? This is from the Chabad. These are like the two angelic forms, wherever you see. Basically, we're saying that it's Hashem sits on the Kiruvim. Okay? The Gemara says, Shedavka me'asara ulemayla, specifically when you have 10 people and more, Yochlim Omar, they are able to say, Ala mazon she'alchanu, on the food which we have eaten. Why are they able to say al hamazon? Sheho'il umaskarim shem shamam. Since we're mentioning the name of Hashem, muchach hadavar, it's proven from the wording, shemevarachim et Hashem, that we're blessing Hashem. Aval, however, bishelosha, but when you only have 3 people, she'ena maskarim shem shamayim, you're not mentioning Hashem's name. Tzrichim lomar nevarech shalchanu mishlo. They need to say nevarech shalchanu mishlo. So if it's 10 people, you are able to go ahead and say nevarech shalchanu, nevarech al hamazon shalchanu. You're able to add those words al hamazon. When it's less than 10 people, say from 3 to 9, you can only say nevarech shalchanu mishlo, and you cannot add the word al hamazon. The Qadi is just telling us that when it's 10 plus people, since you're mentioning Hashem's name, it shows us from there that you're really blessing Hashem. So that's why you are able to bless Al Hamazon She'alchanu. But when it's 3 to 9, we don't have Hashem's name. So it's not recognized, but it's not proven from there that you're blessing Hashem. So the max you can do is, you could say Nevarech She'alchanu Mishalo, but you're not allowed to say Al Hamazon She'alchanu. Continues the Qadi in the opinion of Rabbi Yishai Galila. He says, Biribo vihu omer. What happens if you have 10,000 plus the Mizamen? The Mizamen is going to say, Baruch Hu b'makom nevarech. Same concept, Rabotai. He's going to say, Baruch Hu in place of nevarech. So let me just go back. If you have 10,000, he says, Nevarech la Hashem Elokeinu Elokei Yisrael Elokei Hatzavot Yeshua Krim Ala Mazon Shalchanu. That's when you have 10,000. What happens if you have 10,000 plus the Mizamen? He's going to say, Baruch Hu La Hashem Elokeinu Elokei Yisrael Elokei Hatzavaot Yoshev HaKiruvim Al Hamazon Shalchanu. Nevertheless, Rabotai, we saw that the more acceptable practice is So you say always nevarech to include yourself with the ones that are blessing Hashem and not to exclude yourself from the people that are having the bread meal and blessing Hashem now. Okay, now, up to now we've been speaking about what the mizamen has to say. What about the misubin? The misubin are the people that are reclining and eating bread with them. We spoke about this before. Why are the people called misubim? Why are we calling them the ones that are reclining? Because back then they used to eat by always reclining. Today our sitting down on a chair is similar to their reclining on the floor. So what about the people that would recline and have the bread meal with the mizamen? What do they have to say? So comes the Kahati says, Ke'inyan shehu mevarech, just like the mizamen blesses, meaning kifin nusach ha-mizamen, like the text of the mizamen, kach onim acharav, so too you're going to answer after him. Kigon, for example, biribu hem onim, when you have 10,000, they're going to answer, Baruch Hashem, Elokeinu Elokei Israel, Elokei HaTzevaot Yoshev HaKeruvim Al HaMazon Shalchanu. Now, before we do this, let me just go back for a second. I want to just show you something. When you have 10,000 people, the mizamen has to say, Nevarech LaHashem Elokeinu Elokei Israel, Elokei HaTzevaot Yoshev HaKeruvim Al HaMazon Shalchanu. What are we going to say? What are the misubim going to say? We're going to say the same text, which is going to change the word from Nevarech to Baruch. So we're going to say Baruch LaHashem Elokeinu Israel Elokei Israel Elokei HaTzevaot Yoshev HaKeruvim Al HaMazon Shalchanu. That's it. That's what we're going to do. So that's what he's telling us here. Ki ine shu ha-mivarech kifi nusach ha-mizamen. Just like the text of the mizamen, so too, that's how we're going to answer after him. Kigon, for example, biribu hemonim, when you have 10,000, they're going to answer Baruch Hashem Elokeinu Elokei Israel Elokei HaTzevaot Yoshev HaKeruvim Al HaMazon Sha'alchanu. Now you have to understand, why did the Mishnah go with why did the Mishnah take the case of 10,000? We had a case also of 1,000. We had a case of 100. We had a case also of 10 people. Why did you have to go with the case of 10,000? So the Kahati answers that question and he says, the Mishnah took, for example, the last text. The same halakha is going to apply to other texts. So why did Rabbi Yosef Galili take the last text of 10,000 if it's applicable equally to even 1,000 or even 100 or even 10? So I'll tell you why. Sheken Rabbi Yosef Galili, because Rabbi Yosef Galili says, Lifi rov hakal hen mevarachin. Because according to the majority of the congregation, that's how you have to bless. Meaning, Nusach Azkarat Hashem bebrikat hamazon nikba lifi rov hakahal. That the text of the mentioning of Hashem's name in the Birkat Hazimun is established based off of how many people you have in the congregation. Shenimah, like it states in the pasuk, b'mikahalot baruch hu Elokim, in the assemblies bless Hashem. Adonai Mimkor Yisrael, Hashem is the source of the Jewish people. Mikan, from here, shebikahal rav yesh levarech biribui haskarot. From here we learn out that when you have a lot of people in a congregation, you should bless with many of Hashem's names. So Rabotai, before we do continue, let me just give you another example. What happens if it's 1,000 people, right? How's the mizamen going to bless? The mizamen is going to say, Nevarech LaHashem Elokeinu Elokei Israel Al HaMazon Shalchanu. That's what the mizamen is going to say. What are we going to misubin answer? Baruch LaHashem Elokeinu Elokei Israel Al HaMazon Shalchanu. Another example. When you have 100 people, what does the mizamen say? Nevarech LaHashem Elokeinu Al HaMazon Shalchanu. What are we going to say? Same thing. Baruch LaHashem Elokeinu Al HaMazon Shalchanu. One more. What happens when you have 10 people? What does the mizamen say? And that's the halakha, as we'll see today. Nevarech leLokeinu Shalchanu Mishalo. What are we going to say? Baruch leLokeinu Shalchanu Mishalo. That's what we're going to say. Or, like the more preferred text, we're going to say Baruch Elokeinu Shalchanu Mishalom. Fine. Now, Rabotai, this is this part of the Mishnah. Now, the next part of the Mishnah is going to show us. Let me just find it. Where to go? That's that part of the Mishnah. We'll explain that. Okay. Now the next part of the Mishnah, this is the real machloket between Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Yossi HaGalili. This is what I was trying to explain to you earlier in the class, that why does Rabbi Akiva stick with only saying Hashem's name? Why doesn't Rabbi Akiva, meaning Rabbi Akiva says whether you have 10 people, whether you have 100,000 people, Rabbi Akiva says you're always going to say Nevarech Elokeinu Shalchanu Mishalom. Always Elokeinu. You're not going to add Nevarech La Hashem Elokeinu or Nevarech La Hashem Elokeinu Elokei Yisrael or Nevarech La Hashem Elokeinu Elokei Yisrael Elokei Tzavot. You're not adding all these names. Why? What's going on over here? So this is the machlok that we want to see in the second part of the Mishnah with Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Yossi HaGalili. Amar Rabbi Akiva said, Ma matzinu, just like we find Bebeit HaKnesset in a synagogue, Echad mirubim ve'echad mi'otim, whether you have a lot of people, whether you have a few people, meaning ben kishiyesh misparav shal mitpalalim, whether you have a lot of people davening ben kishiyesh asara bilvat, or whether you have 10 people davening alone, omer ha'oleh Torah, the one that is going up to the Torah, he's going to say v'chein shalich hatzibur, and so too the shalich tzibur lefnei birkot Kriya Shema, before the blessings of the Kriya Shema, what is he going to say? They're going to say, Baruch Hu et Hashem. That's all they're going to say. They're not saying anything else. They're not adding, Elokeinu, Elokei Yisrael, Elokei Tzivot. They're not. It's only Baruch Hu et Hashem. Look what Rabbi Akiva says. Baruch Hu et Hashem, lelo shinu b'nusach haskarat Hashem. He's saying Baruch Hu et Hashem, bless Hashem, without any change in the text of mentioning Hashem's name. It's one and the same. So if that's the case by the shul, so when it comes to the blessing of the zimmun, it's going to be the same halacha. Hanusach hanoheg be'asara, the text which is applicable by 10 people, noheg gam be'eser ribo, it's also applicable by 10,000 people, by 100,000 people. Like we explained above. So comes Rabbi Akiva says, listen, look, it's very simple. We're going to use one text through and through. Why am I using one text through and through? Very simple. In the synagogue, when the one that goes up to the Torah, what blessing does he say to the congregation? Baruch Hu et Hashem. Now, that's when you have 10 people davening. What happens if you have 100,000 people in the synagogue? What is the one that's going up to the Torah? What is he going to say? Baruch Hu et Hashem. Similarly, if the Chazan is there before the Berachot of Kriya Shema, after the Kaddish, what is he going to say if there's 10 people or 100,000 people? He's going to say Baruch Hu et Hashem. Why isn't the text of Hashem's name changing? Why is it the same? Why don't we say Baruch Hu et Hashem, Elokeinu, Elokei Yisrael, Elokei Tzivot, Ayushav B'Ka'al Kuruvim? Why don't we say all these names? Just like in the synagogue, you have one name of Hashem, Baruch Hu et Hashem. So too by Birkat Mazon, have one text, Nevarech Elokeinu, just one of Hashem's name. You don't have to make all these names. So now, Rabbi Shmuel agrees, by the way. We're going to see right now, he's going to say Rabbi Shmuel agrees with Rabbi Akiva. It's just Rabbi Shmuel says you have to add one more word. Rabbi Shmuel says, don't say Baruch Hu et Hashem. According to Rabbi Akiva, all he has to say is Baruch Hu et Hashem. However, according to Rabbi Yossi HaGalili, he says, no, say Baruch Hu et Hashem HaMivarach. All right, so let's do this one more time. According to Rabbi Shmuel, he says, not Rabbi Yossi HaGalili, Rabbi Shmuel. Okay, well, let's do this one more time, Rabbi. According to Rabbi Shmuel, he agrees with Rabbi Akiva that you have to say Baruch Hu et Hashem, but he says add Baruch Hu et Hashem HaMevorach, because according to Rabbi Akiva it's only Baruch Hu et Hashem, but according to Rabbi Shmuel it's Baruch Hu et Hashem HaMevorach. That's what he says over here. Rabbi Shmuel says no. The one that is going up to the Torah or the Chazan that's going to say Baruch Hu before the blessing of the Kriya Shema should say Baruch Hu et Hashem HaMevorach. So here the Kati explains, Av Rabbi Yishmael sover ki Rabbi Akiva. Even Rabbi Yishmael holds like Rabbi Akiva. Shenusach habracha echad hu lemirubim ulemutim. That the text of the blessing is whether you have a lot of people, whether you have a minority, meaning whether you have 10 people, whether you have 100,000 people, doesn't matter. That the text is the same. Eila, rather, shemosiv, but he adds, ki bebeit haKnesset omer ha'oleh laTorah o shalich hatzibur, baruch hu et Hashem ha'mevorach. He should say, baruch hu et Hashem ha'mevorach. Now, Rabotai, before we continue, you have to remember, we have a machloket over here between Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Yossi Galili. Rabbi Akiva says to Rabbi Yossi Galili, look, don't add all these names, La Hashem, Elokei Yisrael, Elokei Tzavot. Don't add. Keep it simple. Comes Rabbi Yishmael, comes the Kahati, and he says, Rabbi Yishmael agrees with Rabbi Akiva that the nusach of the bracha should be one. Whether you have 100,000 people, whether you have 10 people, it should always be one. But he says, I agree with you on that. Fine. Nevertheless, he says, when it comes to the Beit HaKnesset, he says, Elishim Musiv, rather he adds, Ki bebeit HaKnesset omer ha'oleh, but in the synagogue, the one that is going up, La Torah to the Torah, or Shalich Tzibur, or the Shalich Tzibur before the blessing of the Kriya Shema, when he's going to say Baruch Hu, he should say it like this, Baruch Hu et Hashem HaMevorach. Why? Sha'al yidei hosafat HaMevorach, because through the word HaMevorach, Avu einu motzi et atzmo min haklal. He's also not taking himself out from the rule. V'nohagim ki Rabbi Yishmael. The minhag is like Rabbi Yishmael. The one that goes up to the Torah, or the Chazan, after the Kaddish, before the blessings of the Kriya Shema, when he's going to end up saying Baruch Hu, he doesn't say Baruch Hu et Hashem, but rather, he says Baruch Hu et Hashem HaMevorach, like Rabbi Yishmael. What happens when it comes to zimmun? Ha'halacha hi shemishalosha ad asara omer hamizamen. Nevarech shalchanu mishalo. The halacha is going to be like this, Rabotai. Once you have from 3 up until 10, the 10th guy is not included, the mizamen is going to say Nevarech shalchanu mishalom. Ve'akolonim, and everyone is going to answer Baruch shalchanu mishalo uftovo hayinu. Ve'u chozer v'omer, and then the mizamen is going to go back and he's going to say Baruch shalchanu mishalo uftovo hayinu. Ve'im ayu asara u'limayla omer mizamen. What happens if you had 10 and more? The mizamen is going to say Nevarech Elokeinu shalchanu mishalo. The mizamen is going to say Nevarech Elokeinu shalchanu mishalo. Ve'akolonim, and everyone else is going to answer Baruch Elokeinu shalchanu mishalo v'tuv chayinu. Ve'u chozer rakach, and now the mizamen has to go back and he has to repeat the same words by saying Baruch Elokeinu shalchanu mishalo uv'tuvo chayinu. That is the opinion of the Rambam. Now, Rabotai, summary based only on halacha. The definition of zimmun is when 3 or more people eat together and invite each other to bless Hashem after the meal. The person leading is called a mizamin. Rabbi Yossi Galili stated, the more people there are, the longer the wording should be. Meaning, adding more titles of Hashem, like we saw. Source, b'mikahalot beruch Elokim, in assemblies, bless Hashem. Rabbi Akiva, no. Why? So why? Okay, so I have a clear pasuk. So why is Rabbi Akiva not using that same pasuk? No. Rabbi Akiva said no. Whether there are 10 or 10,000, the same wording is used. Why? Just like in a synagogue, we always say the same Baruch Hu, no matter how big the crowd. So Rabotai, over here also by the benching, you're also going to keep it the same text, no matter how big the crowd. Nevarech Elokeinu shalchanu mishalo. That's it, finish. Rabbi Yishmael agrees with Rabbi Akiva. Same wording for all group sizes. He agrees, yes, it's going to be the same. But says we should add HaMevorach, the blessed one. We should add Baruch Hu et Hashem HaMevorach. You should add the word HaMevorach. So the leader is included with the people. By saying Baruch Hu et Hashem HaMevorach, is basically the leader is including himself that he should also go ahead and bless the blessed one. We do not change the wording for big groups. All right, we keep everything the same. Whether it's going to be for Birkat HaMazon, whether it's going to be for Baruch Hu, it's all one and the same. The only thing is Rabbi Yishmael says, look, Rabbi Akiva, I agree with you on everything. But when it comes to the synagogue business, where when you say Baruch Hu et Hashem, according to you, Rabbi Akiva, that's all you have to say. Add the word HaMevorach. So this way, the leader also includes himself with the people. If you have 3 to 9 people, the mizamen is going to say Nevarech Sha'alchanu Mishalom. Others answer Baruch Sha'alchanu Mishalom Uftu V'chainu. Mizamen repeats Baruch Sha'alchanu Mishalom Uftu V'chainu. If 10 or more people, Mizamen says Nevarech Elokeinu, which is the preferred practice. Nevarech Elokeinu Sha'alchanu Mishalom. Others answer Baruch Elokeinu Sha'alchanu Mishalom Uftu V'chainu. Mizamen repeats it by saying Baruch Elokeinu Shalchanu Mishalov Tochainu. Rabotai, we do conclude this Mishnah for Perek Zayin Mishnah Gimel. Be'ezrat Hashem B'lineda, in the following class, we will begin with Mishnah Dalet. Before we do conclude, let's go ahead and see today's Mishnah inside. Okay. The Mishnah in MishnayotPerek in Perek Zayin Mishnah Gimel states, Keitzad mizamnin, how does one do zimmun? How does one invite other people that ate with him bread? So we saw B'Sholoshav, there are only 3 people. The mizamen omer nevarech. The one that is leading the zimmun, he's going to say only nevarech. He's going to say nevarech sha'alchanu mishalom. B'Sholoshav, what happens if it's 3 people plus the mizamen? He's going to say omer baruch hu. He's going to say baruch hu instead of nevarech. Ba'asara, what happens if there are 10 people eating bread together? Omer nevarech lelokeinu. The mizamen is going to say nevarech lelokeinu shalchanu mishalom. Ba'asara, what happens if it's 10 plus him, plus the mizamen? The mizamen is going to say omer baruch hu lelokeinu, or baruch hu elokeinu shalchanu mishalom. Again, all we're doing is taking away the word nevarech and putting baruch hu instead, like we explained in the Kati. And all this, what we're seeing right now, is the opinion of Rabbi Akiva, which is the Tanakama. Tanakama again means the first teacher. Rabbi Akiva said, Echad asara ve'echad asara ribo. Whether it's 10 people, whether it's 10,000 people, or even 100,000 people, the rule is going to be always the same. The mizamen is always going to say the same blessing of nevarech sha'alchanu mishalo, which is the preferred practice. No, not nevarech sha'alchanu. That's for 3. If it's 10 or 10,000 or even 100,000, the preferred practice is nevarech elokeinu shalchanu mishalo. We have to add the word elokeinu. Okay, Rabotai, from here and on, it's all Rabbi Yossi Galili. Okay, so from Keita Mizamnin up to over here, all this was Rabbi Akiva. Now we're going to see the opinion of Rabbi Yossi Galili. B'meya Omer, what happens if you have 100 people that are sitting and having bread together? Nevarech, the B'meya Omer, when you have 100 people that are sitting and eating together, the Mizamen is going to say, Nevarech Allah Hashem. We add the word Allah Hashem for 100 people. Nevarech Allah Hashem Elokeinu, Shalchanu Mishalom. B'me'avehu, what happens if it's 100 plus him, plus the Mizamen? Omer, the Mizamen is going to say, Baruch Hu, La Hashem Elokeinu Shalchanu Mishalom. What happens when you have Be'elef? What happens if you have 1,000 people eating bread together? The Mizamen, Omer, the Mizamen is going to say, Nevarech La Hashem Elokeinu, Elokei Yisrael, right? We're adding this word right here. Okay? Be'elef, what happens if it's 1,000 plus the Mizamen? Omer Mizamen, the Mizamen is going to say, Baruch Hu La Hashem Elokeinu Elokei Yisrael Shalchanu Mishalom. Same thing, Rabotai. Just remember, we're switching the Nevarech with the word Baruch Hu. Now, Biribo, what happens if you have 10,000? Biribo Omer, if you have 10,000, the Mizamen is going to say, Nevarech La Hashem Elokeinu Elokei Yisrael. Now we added in the pink highlighted area, Elokei Hatzevot Yesheva Kiruvim. That's what we're adding right here. Elokei Hatzevot, another name of Hashem. So when you have 10,000, the Mizamen is going to say, Nevarech La Hashem Elokeinu Elokei Yisrael Elokei Hatzevot Yesheva Kiruvim, which comes for the 10,000 people, al Amazon shalchanu. And like we saw that al Amazon shalchanu could only be said with 10 people or more where there's the name of Hashem. But with less than 10 people, from 3 to 9, you can only say nevarech sha'alchanu mishalo. You're not allowed to say nevarech al Amazon sha'alchanu. That you're not allowed to say. Biribu vihu. What happens if you have 10,000 plus the mizamen? Omer, the mizamen is going to say baruch hu. Right? Instead of saying, right, like over here, instead of saying nevarech, he's going to say baruch hu la Hashem Elokeinu Elokei Israel Elokei Atzivot Yoshev HaKeruvim al Amazon Sha'alchanu. Now this topic is going to speak about, in the orange highlighted area, is going to speak about all this. What we learned up to now was what the mizamen has to say, but what about what the misubim have to say? Ki inyan shehu mevarech kach onim acharav. Just like the mizamen blesses, so too we answer after him. For example, if the mizamen said, right, either baruch hu or nevarech Hashem Elokei Elokeinu Elokei Israel Elokei Tzeva'ot Yoshev HaKeruvim al Amazon Sha'alchanu, what are we the Mishpim going to say? Baruch Hashem Elokeinu Elokei Israel Elokei Tzeva'ot Yoshev HaKeruvim al Amazon Sha'alchanu. Rabotai, this same halach applies to everything else in the world of Rabbi Yosef Galili. Now, why do we see from Rabbi Yosef Galili? Why does Rabbi Yosef Galili tell us that you always have to go ahead and you have to always add another name of Hashem to the more people you have? So Rabbi Yosef Galili said, "Lefi rov hakahal hein mevarachin." According to the increase in the numbers of the congregation, that's how you have to bless. I mean, that's how you have to add more of Hashem's name. Shenimar, like the pasuk says, "B'mekahalot baruch hu Elokim." In the assemblies, bless Hashem, Hashem Makor Yisrael, that Hashem is the source of the Jewish people. All right, and we saw in the Kahati said from here we learn out that you have to add more names. Let's just see it right over here. Let's just, let me just 1 second, guys. Right over here. Where do you go? 1 second. Let me see. Right over here. Right here. From this verse, right? B'mikahalot bercho Elokim Adonai me'ukor Yisrael. Mikan, from here, shebekahal rav, when you have a lot of people in the congregation, based off the numbers in the congregation, yesh levarech, one should bless in the zimmun, biribuy haskarot, in the mentioning of the name of Hashem many times more. Like we've been learning up to now. Fine. Okay. So if that is the case, what happened with Rabbi Kiva? Why is Rabbi Kiva's opinion different? Rabbi Kiva said, Mamatino, I go based off the Beit Knesset. Mamatino, just like we find by Beit Knesset in the synagogue, whether you have 100,000 people or 10,000 people, whether you have 10 people, right? The one that is going up to the Torah, or the Chazan, before the blessed and the decree Shema, he's going to say, Baruch Hu et Hashem. He's going to say, blessed are you Hashem. So just like over there, no matter how many people you have in the congregation, it's always one name of Hashem. So too by the Birkat Zimun, it should also be one name. So we saw according to Rabbi Kiva, which is the halacha, we're going to tell you that when you're coming to do the Zimun, whether you have 10 people, whether you have 100,000 people, the blessing is going to be Nevarech Elokeinu Shalchanu Mishalo, and not Nevarech La Hashem Elokei Israel. Right? You're not going to add all those other names. Okay. Rabbi Shmuel agrees with Rabbi Akiva. He agrees with everything. He says by the synagogue, add the word Hamevorach. Right? Instead of saying Baruch Hu et Hashem, that's Rabbi Akiva's opinion. Rabbi Shmuel says, say Baruch Hu et Hashem Hamevorach. Bless Hashem, the one who is blessed.